Hello and welcome back, goats, to the Big Blue Purple channel. Recently, I completed a grind in Final Fantasy XIV which I thought I would never engage with. That's right, I completed the entire Blue Mage log. In this video, I want to talk about my experience doing the Blue Mage log, what I thought of it, what I would like to see done differently in the future, and things of that nature. So let's get into it. Now, I imagine for most of you watching this, you probably don't even know what the Blue Mage log is, especially if you don't engage with Blue Mage at all. Essentially, the Blue Log is like a journal that keeps track of the activities you run as a full group of Blue Mages. You unlock this thing at level 60 after you complete your level 60 job quest, and it'll ask you to run like numerous activities around the game. Things like dungeons, trials, and raids, as well as even 24-man raids. Important to note that pretty much all the content in the Blue Log is normal mode stuff and very easy to go through. It's not going to ask you to do any EX trials or savage raiding, although there are weekly prime targets that show up which will give you a bonus of poetics and gil if you do those, but they're not required for completion of the Blue Log. This was a huge misconception I actually had before I took on the task of doing the Blue Log, because I thought you had to do all the EX trials, all the Savage raids, and all the Coil raids and stuff. I thought that was all contained within the Blue Log, when actually that's not the case at all. It's all just normal content that's super easy to run through. I think something that contributed to my confusion over thinking you need to do extreme trials or whatever was just how rare the Blue Log titles actually are. If you go check 14 Collect or LOL achievements and you look at the statistics here, the newest one, Blue Blazer, only has an achievement rate of around 1%, whereas looking at Blue Ranger, the last Blue Log title from 2 years ago, still only has an achievement rate of 2% after having this much time of being in the game. So yeah, you can see how this rarity gave me the impression that the Blue Log was a lot harder to complete than it actually is. Ironically, I think the real reason this achievement is so rare in the first place is because there's not really an air of prestige around completing the Blue Log. It makes a lot of sense when you consider the time commitment that the Blue Log actually is. I mean, you need to complete 122 duties as a full group of Blue Mages. One of the main challenges of completing this log in the first place is just finding other Blue Mage players who also want to do this content. It really doesn't help when it feels like the devs are actively trying not to incentivize this content. I mean, seriously, you get poetics and allied seals for completing Blue Mage log entries, and then when you finally complete the whole log, you get a title or whatever. That's it. There's no mount, there's no minion, there's no armor set, there's no special Blue Mage weapon you get. There's nothing to work towards in this Blue Mage log other than the simple idea of I want to complete this because I'm being a completionist right now. So why the hell did I spend several hours of my life grinding out Blue Mage content to complete this entire log? Well, it all started when I was bored refreshing the Party Finder one day to stumble upon a Weeping City of Mock party featuring 23 Blue Mages looking for just one more for their Blue Log entry. I was bored at the time and I was like, you know what, fuck it, this sounds kind of fun. Let's see what the Weeping City of Mock is like if we do it as all Blue Mage. To my surprise, I actually had a lot of fun doing this, and when they asked to do Dune Scythe afterwards, I was like, sure, I'll stay for that. This is how I basically involuntarily ended up getting addicted to doing Blue Mage content. After running through those two 24-mans, I noticed I was getting pretty much lapped in damage. Like, these other Blue Mage players were cooking, and I wanted to know how. This is when I went over to Blue Academy and I looked into the damage rotation and I figured out how to actually play Blue Mage properly utilizing the Moonflute opener, and at this point I was hooked. To me, the Blue Log was no longer about just completing the Blue Log, but it was an excuse to go into activities and do the Moonflute opener and practice the job as much as I could while I was in actual content. This kind of ended up serving as the much needed Blue Mage training arc for me, where I got a whole lot better at the job and figured out how it's supposed to be played so that I can go into Savage with it and not throw. Doing this also gave me a lot more respect for Blue Mage as a job, because I found myself really appreciating how free-form and open-ended the job is to play. It's a stark contrast to the standard jobs in the game that follow a very strict and rigid rotation that you're only really supposed to do one specific way every fight. Because Blue Mage is so overpowered and does such an absurd amount of damage, it can be really fun going back into this old content and being like, okay, what can I bring to just absolutely demolish this boss fight? This is certainly where most of the fun with the blue log was for me, in just learning how to play blue mage better and learning how to pour out as much damage as I possibly could, because it's genuinely insane how much damage blue mage does. Anyways, let's talk a bit about each type of content that the blue log is going to ask you to run. Starting with the first and the most annoying piece of the blue log, in my opinion, it's the sheer amount of dungeons it asks you to do. Rather than just asking you to do some select dungeons that would be particularly interesting on Blue Mage, it asks you to do every single dungeon in the goddamn game that's level 50 and above. Now, obviously Blue Mage has a ton of potential to speedrun dungeons, and it's not like it takes an excruciatingly long time to get through any individual dungeon. It's just the sheer number of them you have to do for this log. I mean, dungeons aren't really my idea of fun when I log onto this game. There's only so much that actually playing as blue adds to the experience of running through dungeons. It's still gonna be run through 2 hallways, kill a pack of mobs, kill a boss that hardly even fights back, and then kill a bunch more packs of mobs. That being said, I did have some really chill experiences running dungeons as Blue Mage. I remember one night I found a group that was just running through a bunch of A Realm Reborn dungeons that they needed for the log, and I just chilled there for like 2-3 hours and knocked out like half of the dungeon logs that I needed with those people. So yeah, in terms of dungeons, it's not all bad, but it's certainly just way too many dungeons in this log. I don't see the reason why they would put in every single dungeon from every expansion. It doesn't make sense to me. Especially when we talk about the raids, where they only put in like 5 raids instead of all 12 of them. Trials were my favorite place to practice my Moonflute opener and just get better at doing damage to a single target. Seriously, if you've never been into a all Blue Mage trial party, it is comical how fast the boss gets melted. Like, I was not expecting it. While the trials are a lot more fun than the dungeons, the major downside of this is that finding 7 other Blue Mages is a lot harder than finding 3 other Blue Mages. Thankfully for a lot of the newer logs from Shadowbringers, these are really easy to fill and a lot of people still need them. The problem is for the older log entries, a lot of people don't even care to do them in the first place, so the very small niche sub-community of Blue Mages who are even doing these logs in the first place are pretty hard to come by. This is where the Blue Academy Discord became an invaluable resource for me. There's channels on that server where you can ping a role for the blue log, and then anyone else who needs the blue log will see the ping and then can join your party. While this doesn't magically instantly fill all of your parties, it certainly helps to get them out there a bit more, and it'll bring more people in to help even if they already have the log and they're just bored. Now, in terms of raids, this was probably the most disappointing part of the blue log, and that's not because raids aren't fun, it's quite the contrary. Basically, while the dungeon log asks you to run every single goddamn dungeon in the entire game, the raid log is like, here's 5 raids we want you to do. You don't have to touch the other ones. This really confuses me, because like, if they're gonna go all in on the dungeons and make you do every single one of them, then I will gladly run through every goddamn Omega raid as a Blue Mage, because that'll be significantly more enjoyable than doing 100 fucking dungeons. It just feels like a weird decision, because when I look at the raids that aren't listed in the blue log, it's not because Blue Mage wouldn't be able to clear them or anything, it's just that they're not there. Take something like 09, Chaos. Blue Mages could definitely kill Chaos, it wouldn't be a problem. But for some reason, that fight just isn't there. It's just kind of disappointing as someone who really likes raiding content, even if it is just normal raids. On the flip side of things, my absolute favorite part of the blue log is also included on the raids tab, and that would be the 24-mans, the things that got me doing the blue log in the first place. Now, the absolute curse and the worst part about these 24-mans is having to find all other 23 Blue Mage players in the entire world, get them all into a party, and say, okay guys, we're doing this. But once you're actually in there, it's a blast, and it's hilarious how fast you steamroll these alliance raids. Even the Stormblood ones get absolutely melted. The Crystal Tower raids were specifically funny for just how fast everything died. I think we steamrolled through all 3 of these Crystal Tower raids in less than half an hour. And then having to do the Nier raids as well for the Shadowbringers log entries were really interesting. Specifically the 3rd Nier raid, I remember that one giving us a pretty hard time when we ended up doing it. It's just such a goofy experience having 24 Blue Mages running around doing absurd amounts of damage to absolutely everything. I'd recommend doing Blue Mage 24-mans even if you have no intention of doing the blue log. If you're just bored one day refreshing Party Finder and you see one of these with like 2 or 3 slots left and you can just sneak in there, do it, man. It's a hilarious experience and you will not regret the 10 minutes you spend in there. So yeah, that's all the stuff you have to do for the Blue Mage log. The most annoying stuff is just waiting for these parties to fill. When you get in there, pretty much every piece of content you run as Blue Mage will die a lot faster than you thought it would. If you decide to do the blue log and the only thing you care about is the title, you don't even need to complete the whole thing. You only have to do 110 entries, which gives you exactly 12 entries of leeway, which is just enough to skip all of the 24-mans if you don't have time to find groups for them. I found that once I hit 110 and I got the title, I just wanted to finish the log anyway because it was only 12 more things, and for me it was just 12 dungeons I didn't want to do, so I went and finished them off real quick. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this video, which is somewhat unrelated to the blue log, but still in a way related because of the weekly prime targets, is I wanted to talk about extreme trials as Blue Mage and getting the achievements for doing no echo extreme trials. You see, before I started doing the blue log, I thought that these were going to be required to complete it, but they actually aren't. You just get achievements for them if you decide to go out of your way to do it. The first one I did was King Thornton, because King Thornton actually gives you a title if you do this one as a party of full blue mages with Echo silenced. This sounds scary and hard because it's an extreme trial or whatever, but with the amount of damage output you have as a group of 8 blue mages, especially with the new level 80 spells, it's pretty much trivial if you know how to use your eyes and resolve very basic mechanics such as tower soaks or breaking tethers. Even for the big spear throw he does at the end where you're all supposed to stack for it, you can just have the guy diamond back and it's not a problem. This was definitely the most fun I had with Blue Mage in general, was going for these achievements and doing these extreme trials. The way Blue Mages have to do these fights and solve certain things, utilizing Diamondback and worrying about aggro management, it's so interesting the way Blue Mage has to approach these fights, and it's a lot of fun to learn that. Sephiroth was a particularly fun EX for me to learn because prior to doing it as Blue Mage, I had no experience with this fight. I didn't do it when it was Unreal like I did with Sophia and Zervin, so I actually had to learn this fight from scratch in a Blue Mage group. Obviously you skip a ton of mechanics, but I still had to figure out how the debuffs worked, and I still had to figure out what the tethers do and what the towers do and all that good stuff. The point is, Blue Mage gave me an excuse to go back and make memories with old content I otherwise never would have experienced. You have to consider, right, I'm a Shadowbringers baby. I started playing this game right at the end of Shadowbringers, so when it comes to a lot of this content, I never had a viable way to experience this other than trying to throw up a min-eye level no echo party and praying that people are interested in it. While with Blue Mage, I'm obviously not getting the full experience of the fight because of the sheer amount of damage this job does, it still gives me my own experience with the fight that keeps it memorable in its own way. I bring all of this up to say that if you're someone like me who only did Masked Carnival and you just kind of do Blue Mage for the more solo aspect of it, give this group content a try. Start out by just trying to find like a 24-man group and see what you think of it, but seriously, when it comes to these EX trials and especially the raids, and we'll get to the Savage raiding as Blue in a separate video once I'm done with my Morble. I'm really excited to talk about that. But even just for the extreme trials, there's so much fun to be had trying to solve these mechanics as a group of Blue Mages. It's completely unlike anything else in the game, and I highly recommend you give it a shot, especially if you're bored and you're looking for some new content to try in the game during the content drought that we're going to have in 6.5 and whatnot. Give Blue Mage a shot. We need more Blue Mage players, so please, I'm begging you, come do this content. Anyways, this has been me rambling about the Blue Mage log and my experience completing it, as well as doing some of these EX trials for achievements and whatnot. It's helped me a lot with coming to terms with the fact that despite the lack of rewards in the Blue Mage content, there's still a lot of fun to be had here, and at the end of the day, why else are we playing video games if not to have fun? And I feel like Blue Mage does a really good job at allowing me to have a lot of fun. That being said though, I do hope in our next Blue Mage update, whenever the fuck that's gonna be in like 5 years, I hope that they add something to the Blue Mage log other than just a title and some poetics. I feel like if they just threw a mountain there, or even just a special like glowy Blue Mage weapon, if they just threw a really cool like ultimate raid looking Blue Mage weapon behind the blue log, that would totally incentivize people to go grind that shit out. It's just kind of funny when you're looking at the achievement statistics for this, and you see that Blue Blazer is 9 times more rare than the Perfect Legend. It goes to show just how much of a good reward incentive matters. Something like T is infinitely harder than completing like 80 dungeons and some trials and raids, but nobody wants to do the latter because they don't get anything out of it. Either way, I talked plenty about my thoughts on reward incentive in my previous Blue Mage video and what I think needs to be done there, so I don't want this video to become that again. I hope that if you're somebody like me and you only really did Blue Mage for the Masked Carnival before, that this video can encourage you to maybe go try some EX trials, or just go try to run some stuff for the Blue Log. I encourage you to, if you don't already know your opener as Blue Mage, your Moonflute opener, go figure it out on a striking dummy. It is so fun to press all those buttons. It is such a tight opener, and it feels so good to get it right. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Remember to drop a like, but only if you did, and subscribe to the Big Blue Purple channel if you're not already. I make near-weekly uploads about Final Fantasy XIV, ranging from anything from the sightseeing log to ultimate rating. Otherwise, look forward to the next upload. I'm going to be talking about the Morble experience in 2023 and what it's like to go about getting the Morble mount in 2023. I think a lot of people might enjoy that video, and it'll give some good insight into how much easier those fights have gotten with the new spells. With all that being said though, thank you for tuning into this video, and go join some Blue Log parties and hey, see what you think. You might have more fun than you're expecting. I certainly did.